بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Inshallah, we'll continue from where we left off last week, and we will try and get through this next chapter, so the lesson may be slightly shorter than usual. So the Shaykh, he continues, and we move on to this new chapter in the book of major sins, and the chapter is Babun Dhikru Iradatil Uluwi wal Fasad. So this chapter looks at, we're still on the actions of the heart, the sins that are related to the actions of the heart, the major sins that are related to the actions of the heart. And here we're looking at people where people have the description of being arrogant and causing corruption, basically sinning. So inshallah we'll get into this in more detail as the Shaykh explains it. So the Shaykh begins with an ayah. This is from the original text, the original book, from the original author. وقول الله تعالى تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين. And that's from Surah Al-Qasas verse 83. So let's just have a look at the meaning of that in English before we move on. So Surah Al-Qasas verse 83, that home of the hereafter, i.e. paradise, we shall assign to those who rebel not against the truth with pride and oppression in the land, nor do mischief by committing crimes, and the good end is for the muttaqun, the pious. So two of those words that the Shaykh mentioned are from this ayah. So those who don't rebel against the truth, as in the ones who are arrogant, and therefore because of their arrogance they are rebelling against the truth and thinking they are better than others, and also oppression in the land, causing corruption or oppression in the land by doing mischief and committing crimes, sins, i.e. sins. So inshallah the Shaykh will expand on this as we go through the lesson. Barakallahu feekum. So then the Shaykh begins to explain this. He says, قال رحمه الله باب ذكر إرادة العلو والفساد والإرادة من جملة أعمال القلوب، وهذا فيه أن من أعمال القلوب السيئة الواجب الحذر منها، أن يحذر الإنسان من أن يكون في قلبه إرادة للعلو في الأرض وإرادة للفساد في الأرض، فإن وجود هذه الإرادة من جملة أمراض القلوب وذميم أعمالها. ولهذا عقد رحمه الله تعالى هذه الترجمة. قال باب ذكر إرادة العلو. إرادة العلو أي على عباد الله بالتكبر عليهم وبالتكبر على الحق وبازدراء الخلق وانتقاصهم، كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام الكبر بطر الحق وغمط الناس. بطر الحق رده وعدم قبوله، وغمط الناس ازدراؤهم واحتقارهم وانتقاصهم. So then in this paragraph the Shaykh, he goes on to say, and he mentions the title of the chapter. We've already read that, so we won't go through that again. Then the Shaykh, he says that the meaning of the word irada is wanting. So it's when you want or desire something or want to do something, it starts in the heart, because that's where you get the feeling from, or the thought, for example, and then you go and do that thing, whatever it might be. So generally speaking, the Shaykh says it is from the actions of the heart. And then he goes on to say that, and as we know, the actions of the heart, these certain actions of the heart, for example, what's mentioned in this chapter, corruption and mischief and arrogance, these are bad actions from the heart. They are bad actions, negative actions from the heart, and it's obligatory that we are aware, and the person stays away from falling into such situations as having, harboring those feelings in your heart. Yeah. uh, uh, and turning away from the truth, being arrogant, trying to arrogant, and the way you deal with people, for example, and showing arrogance in general like this, and causing corruption and mischief and trouble as well. And the Shaykh says that, because he says, indeed or verily, the presence of this in the heart, or these actions of the heart, like the ones we've just mentioned, are from the diseases of the heart, and are from the lowest of actions of the heart. Lowest as in, what can we say, the worst, from the worst of the actions, the negative, the bad actions that the person can do in terms of his actions of the heart. And it's from the diseases of the heart, spiritual diseases, that is. And then the Shaykh says, this is why the original author, Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, mentioned this and explained this to us in this chapter here. Then the Shaykh, he continues and he says to us that the word ulu, or arrogance, he says, I upon the servants of Allah. So being arrogant upon the servants of Allah, over them, overarching, the way you deal with people in an arrogant way, being arrogant with them, and also being arrogant in terms of the truth, i.e. rejecting it, like as we read in the ayah earlier. And talking down to people, knocking them down, making them feel small, and belittling them. That's the kind of thing that an arrogant person would do, and we should stay away from it. So then the Shaykh mentions this as well, and then he mentions the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Kibru batarul haqqi wa ghamtun nas. And the Shaykh explains that, he says that basically the meaning of this hadith is that that arrogance, a person who holds arrogance, it causes him to reject or not accept the truth, as we hear, as we read in the hadith. Wa ghamtun nas, i.e. what we just mentioned, overarching over people, belittling them, and belittling them and knocking them down. So that sums up the hadith, and I remember that we did go through this as well several lessons ago. This hadith was also mentioned. So let's carry on. The Shaykh, he goes on to say then, وَقَوْلُهُمْ وَالْفَسَادِ. So now we'll talk about the corruption, so the corruption part of fasad, corruption and mischief. The Shaykh, he says, أي إرادة الفساد. الفساد يشمل جميع المعاصي لأن المعاصي فساد في الأرض ولا تفسد في الأرض بعد إصلاحها. الآية أي بعد أن أصلحها الله ببعثة النبيين ودعوة المرسلين عليهم صلوات الله وسلامه. فالمعاصي بأنواعها كلها من الفساد في الأرض، وكل من يدعو إلى المعاصي والذنوب فهو من المفسدين في الأرض بحسب ما يدعو إليه من المعاصي والذنوب. So then in this short paragraph here that we've just read, the Shaykh, he defines for us fasad in more detail, corruption and mischief, and he says it's the heart wanting, he refers to it actually here as all of the disobediences, so all types of disobedience, because he says because disobedience on the earth is corruption itself and mischief. And then the Shaykh brings a part of an ayah from Surah Al-A'raf 56, verse 56. So let's go there. Surah Al-A'raf, verse 56. Let's read all that. And do not do mischief on the earth after it has been set in order. So that part of the verse the Shaykh brings for us to reflect upon what he's saying here. And he says, i.e., what does that part of the verse mean? I.e., that Allah had rectified had rectified everything by way of sending the prophets and the messengers. May Allah's mercy, may Allah's blessings be upon them. So on them all. So that's what that means there. This is what the Shaykh mentions. So then the Shaykh says, and so disobedience by its types, all of its types, is from corruption and mischief, or causing corruption and mischief in the land. And whoever and everyone or whoever calls to disobedience and sinning, then they are corrupters and those who cause mischief in the land, according to what they are calling to of disobedience and sin. So then the Shaykh, he goes on to say, he says, قال وقول الله تعالى تلك الدار الآخرة نجعلها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا والعاقبة للمتقين. So we've already read this. This was the start of the lesson. The Shaykh reminds us again of the verse, and he goes on to explain further. He says, وهذا ذكره الله سبحانه وتعالى في سياق آيات ذم فيها قارون الذي كان من صفته العلو في الأرض والإفساد فيها واستغلال الأموال الطائلة الكثيرة التي أتاه الله سبحانه وتعالى إياها بالإفساد في الأرض والعلو فيها على عباد الله سبحانه وتعالى، فعاقبه الله بأشد عقوبة وخسف به وبداره الأرض، فكان عبرة للمعتبرين وعظة للمتعذرين. So then the Shaykh, he mentions, he says here, we'll take a short pause so to explain this or to translate it. The Shaykh, he says that referring to this ayah that we've just read, that Allah mentioned this in the context of Qarun, because of Qarun, and as we know the story of Qarun, that he had these bad descriptions of being arrogant in the land and causing corruption and mischief in the land. And Allah gave him, and he was given a large amount of wealth, lots of wealth that Allah gave him. And as we know, he used it for bad, by causing corruption in the land and belittling other people, and being arrogant. So then Allah punished him with the most severest of punishments, as we know in the story, and obviously the land underneath him was destroyed. And this punishment, it was a lesson for those who read and reflect upon what happened. It's a lesson for those, and a reminder for those who want a reminder. So then the Shaykh, he goes on to say, في هذا السياق قال تلك الدار الآخرة أي بثوابها العظيم ونعيمها المقيم. So then the Shaykh, he is explaining this verse step by step now. So the part at the start of the verse, تلك الدار الآخرة, that is the final destination, Darul Akhirah, in the hereafter. And he says, i.e., with all its rewards and great blessings, and the place that we will stay or a place that will people will reside in. Then the word naj'aluha in this verse, the Shaykh says makhsusa, meaning is specific. Allah says that we made it is specific for who? لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ عُلُوًّا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا. So it's specific for those who do not reject the truth because of their arrogance, and who are arrogant, so who are not arrogant and do not reject the truth on earth, and they don't want to cause corruption. They don't cause corruption and mischief in the land, i.e. through various sins and actions. The Shaykh goes on to say, أي ليس في قلوبهم إرادة الشر والإفساد في الأرض. And the Shaykh says also here, i.e. that in those people there's no they don't harbor in their heart a want for doing evil and causing corruption in the land. And the Shaykh says that this word irada, or wanting to do something, the desire or want for something, its place, its starting point is in the heart. Its place is in the heart. Then he goes on to say, فَإِذَا كَانَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ لَيْسَ فِيهَا إِرَادَةُ إِفْسَادٍ أو إِرَادَةُ عُلُوٍ في الأرض لزم من ذلك أن تكون إرادتهم إرادة صالحة، إرادة طيبة مستقيمة مصروفة إلى الله سبحانه وتعالى وإلى ما فيه رضاه عز وجل، مصروفة إلى ما فيه نفعهم وفائدتهم في الدار الآخرة، فتكون الدار الآخرة لهم دون غيرهم، لأن إرادتهم ليس فيها إرادة إفساد في الأرض وليس فيها إرادة علو في الأرض، وإنما إرادتهم مصروفة للصلاح والإصلاح في الأرض، وإرادة الثواب من الله سبحانه وتعالى في دار الآخرة، فتكون الدار الآخرة لهم دون غيرهم. ولهذا المفسد في الأرض والذي يريد الفساد في الأرض ويريد العلو في الأرض ليس له في الآخرة من خلاق، وإنما الدار الآخرة جعلها الله سبحانه وتعالى وخصها للذين لا يريدون علوا في الأرض ولا فسادا. So then, finishing off this paragraph, the Shaykh says, so if those who don't want, they don't have arrogance, they don't have the arrogance in them, in their hearts, and they don't have the desire to do evil, they're the ones who ultimately get the reward, obviously, in the context of what we're talking about. The Shaykh says, so then what's in their hearts then? He says the only thing that can be in their hearts and what they're carrying in their hearts is good, is righteous actions, that they want to do good things, they want to spread good, and they want to be upright, and they want to spread and rectify, and that they're on this goodly path, and that they are on the path that Allah wants them to be, as in be on the straight path, and that they're seeking Allah's pleasure, and Allah's pleased with them. So what in terms of all that will obviously benefit them and will be a benefit for them in the hereafter, in the life after death. So the life after death or the hereafter is for them, then, because they earned it, because their want and their desire, it wasn't to cause corruption and mischief and sin on earth when they lived on the earth, rather it was the opposite, and also they didn't have a desire to be arrogant and reject the truth and belittle people and deal with people in this evil way, but rather they wanted to rectify and be upright themselves, and rectify others to the right path and to do the right thing. And so the reward, Allah's reward, is for them, for those people who fit that category. This is what the Shaykh is saying here. And then he goes on to say, and that's why the one who's corrupt and who's sinning and spreading corruption on the land or on the earth, for example, or who wants to cause corruption on earth, and wants to be arrogant and belittle other people, and overtower them and belittle them and knock them down, for him there isn't a share of the hereafter. He's not going to taste the fruits of the hereafter. And the Shaykh says, as Allah has made the hereafter, the reward in the hereafter, has made it for has made it specific for those who do not want to be arrogant, who are not arrogant, and who do not reject the truth, and those who do not openly like go out there causing corruption in the lands, in general, causing corruption in the land, on earth, and sinning. So then the Shaykh, he finishes off, he says, والعاقبة أي الحميدة والمآل الطيب في الدنيا والآخرة للمتقين دون غيرهم. So the al-aqiba, as in the conclusion or the ending, the end result, i.e. it's going to be a good result. The good end is going to be for those who fit that category of not being arrogant, not rejecting the truth, and not causing corruption in the land. In this dunya, in the worldly life, and the next. Lil muttaqeen, for the muttaqeen, for the pious, and not for other than them. It's for the pious people. The reward is for the pious people. Then the Shaykh continues, he says, قال رحمه الله تعالى عن أنس رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه أخرجه. So this is from Sahih Muslim and Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari. Well-known hadith. I think all of us will know this one, inshallah. Then the Shaykh, he goes on to explain. He says, قال عن أنس رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه أخرجه. أي البخاري ومسلم. So the Shaykh, he begins explaining this. So just to go over a general meaning of this is that not one of you will believe up until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And the Shaykh, inshallah, will explain this as we go down, and then inshallah I think we'll finish there. Yeah, so we got probably another 5 or 10 minutes and we'll finish the lesson, inshallah. So the Shaykh breaks this hadith down for us. لا يؤمن أحدكم. So he's going to break it down bit by bit. لا يؤمن أحدكم. النفي هنا للإيمان هو نفي للإيمان الواجب، ونفي الإيمان الواجب يستحق عليه من نفي عنه الإيمان العقوبة، لأن هذا أمر أوجبه الله سبحانه وتعالى، فمن لم يفعله استحق العقوبة. فالله عز وجل أوجب على المؤمن أن يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه، والمحبة مكانها القلب، وهذا فيه أن المؤمن سليم القلب تجاه إخوانه، ليس فيه غل ولا حقد ولا حسد ولا ضغائن ولا غير ذلك، بل يحب لهم الخير، بل يحب لهم من الخير مثل ما يحب لنفسه، لا يحسدهم، لا يحقد عليهم، لا يحمل سخائم في صدره تجاههم، بل سليم الصدر تجاه إخوانه المسلمين. ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. الآية. فمن لم يكن كذلك فإن الإيمان الواجب ينفى عنه كما في الحديث، لأنه ترك شيئا أوجبه الله سبحانه وتعالى عليه. So let's take a short pause there while we go through this and translate it. So then the first part, لا يؤمن أحدكم, the Shaykh explains it as we read in this Arabic, we read in Arabic in this paragraph. He says it's a negation of one's iman with reference to what Allah has obligated. So iman al-wajib. This is the types of iman. The type of iman here is iman al-wajib, because Allah has obligated, is obligated the person, his servant, with this. So therefore it's to do with an obligation. And the Shaykh says that whoever does not or falls out of this in terms of doesn't perform this obligation that Allah has charged him with, then he is deserved of punishment. Because the Shaykh says, because Allah has obligated, He's commanded His servant with this action. So whoever doesn't do it, he deserves to be punished. And Allah Azza wa Jal has obligated upon the believer that he love for his brother what he loves for himself. And love, its place is the heart, and in it, or and also in this, that the believer, he should be, the believer is free from these this fault, as in not loving, for example, not loving for your brother what you love for yourself. And so we should be in that state where we don't have this hatred, as the Shaykh explains here. I'll carry on translating it, we'll see. So for example, there's in his heart, he doesn't carry in his heart, or he should not carry in his heart, hatred, what's the word, for example, hatred, or having I forgot the English word for it now, but I'll come back to it if I remember it, sorry. So having hatred towards someone, jealousy towards somebody, your brother or your sister in Islam. So you're not having that kind of those feelings that people often have. It's a common thing that happens, that can happen. I remember now. A grudge. So not having grudge. A grudge is as well holding a grudge against someone, hating someone. As in we're talking about believers, between the believers, and of that sort, and being jealous. Rather, the state that we should be in, as the Shaykh is explaining here, we should be loving. We should be loving for them what we love for ourselves, and we should love good for them. This is how we should be with our brothers and sisters in Islam. So wherever we love for ourselves, we should love for them, and vice versa. This is how it is. And we've been warned against having hatred towards them, having hatred, holding grudges, all this kind of thing, right? And we shouldn't feel that way towards our brothers and sisters. Rather, we should be free from all of those defects in our hearts, and we should have our hearts clean and clear of all that. For the believers and between the believers. Then the Shaykh, he brings an ayah from Surah Al-Hashr verse 10. So let's go through this, inshallah. Surah Al-Hashr verse 10. I'll read the whole ayah. And those who came after them say, Our Lord, forgive us and our brethren who have preceded us in faith, and put not in our hearts any hatred against those who have believed. Our Lord, you are indeed full of kindness, most merciful. So then that's evidence for what the Shaykh has said here, and that backs up nicely what he said. So the Shaykh says, so this is from the obligatory iman, that we love for others what we love for ourselves, as mentioned in the hadith. Let's carry on. قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه وكما عرفنا المحبة مكانها القلب وهذا معناه أن يكون قلب المسلم قلبا نظيفا نقيا نزيها ليس فيه إضمار شر وإرادة إضمار شر وإرادة شر وإرادة فساد في الأرض وإرادة علو على عباد الله سبحانه وتعالى بل هو مع المؤمنين وفيهم يحب لهم ما يحب لنفسه من الخير ولهذا من كان بهذا الوصف يحب لإخوانه المسلمين ما يحب لهم في الخير هذا من علامات هذا من علامات ودلائل أنه لا يريد علوا في الأرض ولا فساد وهذا وجه إرادة المصنف رحمه الله تعالى لهذا الحديث والذي بعده تحت هذه ترجمة. So then the Shaykh, he goes on to say and to summarize this part that we're reading. So it says, as we know that love is in the heart, is places in the heart, and meaning that the heart of the Muslim, it is a clean heart, a pure heart, yeah, and it's free from these defects, free from these diseases that have been mentioned. He doesn't have, he doesn't even have a small amount of evil in his heart. He doesn't have any evil in his heart, for example, and he doesn't have any corruption in his heart to cause corruption on earth. He doesn't have any of this. It's all clean, clear, pure. He doesn't have any want for being arrogant, belittling people, knocking them down, rejecting the truth, and being somebody of that nature. Rather, he is with the believers and around them. He loves for them what he loves for himself of good. And the Shaykh says, and that's why that having this description or these characteristics, the person, he loves for his brothers, his Muslim brothers, and he loves for them all good, all that which is good. And this is from the signs and the evidences or indicators that this person who's like this, he does not want to be, he's not a person who's wanting to be arrogant and belittle people and knock them down and overtower them and overpower them and to cause trouble on to be causing trouble and corruption throughout the land. And this is what the Shaykh who's explaining it, Shaykh AbdurRazzaq Al-Badr Hafidhullah, he says this is what the original author Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab wanted to portray here and exhibit for us in this explanation that we've translated, alhamdulillah. So we've got another few minutes and then we'll wrap up, inshallah. Barakallah feekum, bear with me. قال رحمه الله تعالى وعن أبي محمد عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. قال وعن أبي محمد عبد الله بن عمرو بن العاص رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. لا يؤمن أحدكم أي الإيمان الواجب حتى يكون هواه أي ميل نفسه تبعا لما جئت به، أي أن يكون محبا للسنة محبا لهدي النبي الكريم عليه الصلاة والسلام مؤثرا له على غير مبغض لهديه صلوات الله وسلامه عليهم. لا يؤمن العبد الإيمان الواجب حتى يكون بهذه الصفة هواه أي ميل نفسه تابع لما جاء به الرسول صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. So in this final hadith that the Shaykh mentions here, similar meaning as well. So on the authority of Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, may Allah be pleased with them both, that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that none of you will believe until you make you follow what I came with, basically. So following what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, his sunnah. So let's see what the Shaykh says. He explains it. He goes on to say that, he says the first part of this hadith, لا يؤمن أحدكم, as mentioned earlier as well in the previous hadith. This sentence construction, لا يؤمن أحدكم, none of you will believe, is referring to the obligatory iman, that when we are commanded with something, when Allah commands us with something, for example, or the Prophet ﷺ commands us with something to do, and then we don't do it, then we are going away from the obligation of that command. We are disobeying, basically is disobedience, and therefore the person is deserved of punishment for that. That's what that means, as the Shaykh mentioned earlier as well. Then we move on to the other part of the hadith, the next part, حتى يكون هواه, until his desire, and hawa is desire, but here is meaning that the person that he desires, what does he desire? He desires, i.e. following what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, i.e. he loves the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that he is following it, and that he is affected by it, and that he's living that, he's doing his level best to follow that and to be clinging to it. And when he learns something from the sunnah, he's carrying it out, he's practicing it, he's not rejecting it, he's not hating it, he's not harboring any malice against it. When it comes to him and it's been made clear that this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ with the evidences, he gladly follows it or tries his best to implement it. This is the kind of mindset, and this is a command from the Prophet ﷺ, as we are reading right now in front of us. So the Shaykh says that the servant of Allah will not believe, i.e. meaning al-iman al-wajib, the obligatory iman, up until he desires that which what the Prophet ﷺ came with from his sunnah and his guidance. Salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. So inshallah we'll wrap up there. Barakallahu feekum, and we'll continue next week, and we'll be covering a different chapter, as you can see here, inshallah. We'll stick to the same time for now. Barakallahu feekum. So it'll be 8 p.m. UK time for now. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.